Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel AWS Devops Niche 11. So in this video, I'm going to typically focus on the trainings, what is being offered from AWS Devops Niche 11. Generally in each of my videos, I used to put it in my description that I offer trainings on AWS and Devops. So in this video, I thought of going through in detail what exactly the modules that I cover as part of the AWS and DevOps trainings. So before we go into that, so we know that cloud and DevOps are the buzzwords in the IT industry these days. So I have been conducting training sessions on cloud and DevOps. So typically AWS Cloud for the last 5 years. And one of my mission is to equip the students graduating from the college, that is especially the freshers who want to get into the IT domain, and also people who are already in a non-IT background and they want to get into the IT domain. So through my trainings, I want to equip them with all the needed skills that is required to become competent in the job market and to grab the job opportunities. So that is a mission I have as part of the trainings that I'm offering, right? So typically to enable the freshers as well as the people in the non-IT background to gain the needed skills on the cloud and DevOps, which is the most hot technologies in the market today, and then enable them to grab the job opportunities. So at the same time, this is also for the people who are already on the IT domain and they want to take a leap in their career in the area of cloud and DevOps. Right? So people might be already in the IT domain. They might be working as a system administrators, or they can be a database administrators, or they might be in the programming line. They might be in the development line, and they want to really, get into the DevOps area, or they want to specialize in the cloud technology. So my trainings would be catering to those people as well. Okay. So now we will go through what exactly I am covering as part of these trainings. So first we will start with AWS. So if you see here, my AWS training is typically aiming at this particular certification, which is the AWS SysOps Administrator Associate Certificate, right? So my AWS course modules are typically aligned towards this SysOps Administrator certification, right? So now what are all the modules I cover as part of this AWS training? So let's go through that. So if you see here, this AWS certification is going to span for 4 weeks. Overall, it is going to be a 24 hours of training duration. And I'm going to typically start with the introduction to the cloud modules, where we will talk about the basics of cloud computing. What is the advantage of cloud computing over the traditional data center, and how the AWS have distributed their data centers across the globe through the concept of regions and availability zones. So we will touch upon all those, basic concepts on the cloud, and we will also talk about the various cloud service models like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, etc. That is part of the cloud service models. Then we will touch upon the cloud deployment models like the public cloud, private cloud, hybrid and community cloud, right? And whatever is in blue, those are all the lab exercises that we will be doing across each of the modules. So as part of the module one, I will help you with how to create a free tier account. Then how do you basically, access the AWS services from various sources, from the command line interface, from the SDKs, etc. Right? So that is what we are going to typically cover in the module one, introduction to AWS. Then as part of the module two, we are going to deep dive onto the core service, which is EC2, the Elastic Compute Cloud. This is basically the service that will help us to create the virtual servers in the cloud. Whether it can be a Windows machine or it can be a Linux system. So we will be doing extensive lab exercises on the EC2 service. So we will see how to set up a web server, how to create a custom AMIs, how do we create an elastic IP address, which is a static IP address, how do you assign it to the EC2 instances, etc. So that is what is going to be module 2. Module 3, we are going to talk about the storage services. So what are all the various storage services available within AWS and what are its use cases, right? So as part of that, we are going to see how do you create a volume, which is nothing but the logical hard disk, logical storage, and how do you create a snapshot from the volume. And most of the labs that we will do on storage services is going to hover around the S3 service, which is another critical storage service, right? So we will do various lab modules on the S3 service. So the next will be the module on the networking and monitoring services. How do you create your isolated network within the cloud? We call that as a VPC. It is a virtual private cloud. So how do you create a VPC with your own set of IP addresses, with your own set of internet gateways, NAT gateways, etc. So we will do a deep dive on those topics. Then we will also see how do you set up your, the VPC peering. How do you link the two VPCs to talk to each other? And how do you create a CloudFront distribution? So these are all the various lab exercises that we will be doing as part of the networking and monitoring services. So typically, it is going to deal with various components of the VPC. How do you set up those components, which includes the NAT instance, the NAT gateway. Then we will also see how to link the two VPCs using the VPC peering. Then how do you create a CloudFront distribution that will leverage the edge locations. Now, the module 5 is going to talk about the database services. So if at all we want to set up a database service within the cloud, so how do you set up the database engine? So we have various database engines that is available. We can set up a MySQL database, we can set up a MS SQL database, Oracle, etc. So module 5 is typically going to be around the database services. Then we will also talk about the elastic catch services what AWS offers, right? So AWS is typically offering two types of elastic catch services, Redis and Memcached. We will talk about that as well. Then from the lab perspective, we will see how do we create a MySQL database on the cloud, and how do you create a DynamoDB table, which is typically to store your unstructured or a semi-structured data. So as part of module 6, we are going to talk about three core services, which is the load balancing, auto scaling, and Route 53. So what are all the various load balancers that are available within AWS? How do you set up those load balancers? What are their use cases? Then we will talk about how to set up the auto scaling policies. If at all you want to have additional instances provision during a peak load situation, how do you set up those auto scaling policies? Then what is the use of the Route 53 service? All those things we will be dealing in detail in the module 6. So in the module 7, we are typically going to talk about the monitoring service in AWS, and which is CloudWatch. CloudWatch is a native monitoring solution from AWS, and we will do some lab exercises around CloudWatch. So we will see how to configure a CloudWatch alarm, how do you set up the CloudWatch dashboard, how to set up a CloudWatch event bridge, right? And if at all you want to monitor some custom metrics using CloudWatch, how do you install the CloudWatch agent and enable the custom metrics, right? And how do you configure your billing alarm, etc. So this is what we will cover as part of the CloudWatch. And there is a logging service available within AWS, which is a Cloud Trail. So we will be doing a lab around the Cloud Trail as well. Then we will also do a lab session on the AWS config, which is one of the configuration management service from AWS. Now, as part of the module 8, we are going to talk about some security related modules as well as some services that is enabling the automation. For example, we will talk about SSM, which is a systems manager, right? So we will touch upon the SSM service. Then we will also do a lab demo on Cloud Formation, which is an infrastructure as a code service from AWS, right? So Cloud Formation is a IaaC solution from AWS, So we know about Terraform, which is a very popular IaaC platform, but from AWS, it is CloudFormation, which is the IaaC solution. Then we will also talk about the service named Trusted Advisor, what is its use case and what is the use of tagging. How do you create your budgets in AWS? And we will also touch upon the IAM concepts. How do you create your users, policies, the groups, etc. Then we will also touch upon the KMS service, which is the key management service. How do you encrypt the data using the KMS? Then we will do a very interesting lab demo on the WAF, which is the web application firewall, so which is used to prevent the DDoS attacks happening in the environment today, right? Then whatever additional services from where we can expect questions on the exam, I will be focusing on those as well, right? And as a last part, we are going to review the certification exam guide for the SysOps administrator certification, and we will also review some sample examination questions. Okay, so this is typically what I cover as part of the the AWS training, where the modules are very much focused towards this SysOps administrator certificate. Right. So now let's focus on the next training that I offer, which is the DevOps. So as part of the DevOps, what are all the modules that I'm covering? You can just quickly go through that. So one is, starting with the introduction, I'm going to talk about the various SDLC methodologies. So we all know about the waterfall model, agile model, right? And then came the DevOps. So what are all the difference between each of these models, right? That is where we will start. Then we will try to understand the skills that is needed of a DevOps engineer, right? There are many misconceptions about this. What are all the actual skills a DevOps engineer needs, right? Does he really need a coding knowledge or not, right? All those misconceptions are there. We'll try to clarify all this. Then we will talk about the DevOps lifecycle. What are all the various stages that gets involved in the software release, and we will go through the various DevOps tools. And after that, I'm going to basically deep dive on individually each of the tools within DevOps. But in summary, you can see that these are all the tools that I will be covering in the DevOps course. Right? So we will start with Git, which is typically for the developers. It's a source code development tool. Then we will talk about Maven, which is the build tool, right? If at all you want to build your project, Maven is a popular tool typically for the Java projects. Then we will also talk about JFrog, which is a popular artifact repository in the market today. So we will see how to set up JFrog and what are all its advantages. Then we will talk about Jenkins, which is a critical continuous integration tool. Then SonarQube, which is a tool again used by the developers to analyze their static code. Then from the configuration management tools, we are going to talk about Ansible, do some lab modules around Ansible and Docker, very popular container platform. Then we will also, deep dive on Kubernetes, which is a very popular container orchestration platform. Then from the monitoring standpoint, we will see how do you create, a Prometheus monitoring system from the Kubernetes cluster itself, right? Then I'm also going to talk about Terraform and do some lab exercises around Terraform as well, right? So how do you create resources in the AWS cloud using the Terraform code? So typically, these are all the tools that I will be covering as part of DevOps. So DevOps course duration again will be 6 to 8 weeks, and it's going to be completely focused on hands-on lab exercises. That's common for both AWS and DevOps, where you're going to get a complete, hands-on lab. And for both the courses, I'm also going to, give some guidance on the resume preparation and help you with some interview questions as well. Okay. So if you see here individually for each of the tools, we are going to have a detailed lab session. For example, for Git, we are going to talk about the various Git commands. For Maven, we are going to see how to set up Maven and how do you build a Java project. Similarly, for JFrog, how to set up the Artifactory and how do you integrate that with, Jenkins. Similarly, for Jenkins, we are going to see the various lab modules around how to set up Jenkins, or how do you run your jobs in Jenkins, how to do a poll SEM and GitHub webhook, how to configure those. Jenkins master and slave configuration, all those things we will be doing in Jenkins. Similarly for SonarQube, we will understand its architecture, what is the components, what are all the various components of SonarQube, and we will set up the SonarQube and integrate with Jenkins. From Ansible, these are all the lab exercises that we will do. Similarly for Docker, we will try to understand how to set up Docker, what are all the various Docker commands, how do you upload your images onto the Docker Hub, right? What is the use of a Docker Compose, Docker Swarm? How do you set up your own Docker registry, the private registry? And what is the concept behind the Docker networks and Docker volumes? All those things we are going to talk in detail about Docker. Then coming on to the Kubernetes, we will try to understand the Kubernetes architecture. What are all the various Kubernetes components? And especially we are going to talk about the hem charts. How do you create your Kubernetes cluster using hem charts? Hem charts are becoming quite popular these days, right? And from the lab perspective on Kubernetes, we are going to see how do you set up a lab environment with a Kubernetes cluster using the Minikube. Then we are going to see how do you set up a Kubernetes cluster in the EKS, which is the Elastic Kubernetes cluster in AWS. And how do you create your deployments, your services using the kubectl commands, and how to create those using the manifest files. So that is what we are going to touch upon as part of the Kubernetes. Then from the monitoring tool standpoint, we are going to see how to set up Prometheus and Grafana using the hem charts. That will be the lab exercise for the monitoring tools. Now coming to the Terraform, we are going to see the introduction to the infrastructure as a code, what are all the various IAC tools that is available, right? And we'll get an overview on the Terraform HashiCorp configuration language. We call it as a HCL, right? Then how do you install Terraform and how do you set up some AWS resources using Terraform, right? And some use cases with the Terraform variables. And last but not the least, we are going to see a complete lab demo on the setting up the CI/CD pipeline, a continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline, integrating all the DevOps tools. Right? So that will be the final outcome of this overall course, where we will be setting up a complete CI/CD pipeline, including all the tools, starting from Git till deploying the application to the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so I hope this has given you some insights on what are all the modules I'm going to cover as part of both AWS as well as DevOps. So typically for people who are in the non-IT background or freshers, right? So I will be covering these topics also, wherein I'll be giving an overview on the Linux basics because it's imperative to understand some Linux commands, as most of our lab exercises will be done on the Linux environment. So we will have a basics on the Linux as well. Then I'm going to give some basic knowledge on the networking part, storage, DNS, virtualization, and load balancers. Again, for the people coming from the non-IT background, it's important for them to know these concepts before they start working on the AWS services. And also, as mentioned earlier, this AWS training course is typically targeted towards the SysOps administrator certification with a complete hands-on lab exercises. Right, and the DevOps training course is going to focus on all the popular DevOps tools, as I was highlighting before, right? So including Docker, Kubernetes, within Kubernetes, hem charts, and all those, right? All those niche tools will be focused as part of the DevOps training course. And apart from this, I'm also going to give a guidance on the resume preparation, wherein highlighting or providing you some insights on how you can highlight your project experience in your resume with the cloud services as well as the DevOps tool knowledge, right? So that is going to make your resumes look more competitive and attract opportunities to get call from the recruiters. Okay. Right. Also, team, yes, I'm also going to help you with some mock interview sessions, right? How do you what kind of questions generally you can get on the cloud as well as the DevOps interviews, and how do you grab the, track those interview questions. I'm going to give some guidance on those as well. Okay. So, yeah, as I was mentioning, from the AWS standpoint, typically I'm going to focus on this administrator module. So people who are already working as a system administrators, right? If at all they want to go into the domain of cloud administrators, my training is going to be absolutely beneficial to them. Okay, also just to add, the training mode, it is going to be an online training via the Zoom session, right? And at the end of each and every class, the class recordings will be uploaded onto the Google Drive chat, right? Where you will be provided access to. And overall, it is an interactive course. It is an interactive course completely focused on the hands-on lab exercises. Okay, that is one thing I wanted to make it very clear. Fine, team. Now let's get into the fee details, right? So if at all you want to pursue this course, no, first and foremost, if you are interested, you can actually send an email. I will be sharing my email ID as well, for which I have mentioned at the end of each of my recording. So if at all you are going for the SysOps administration certification training, the course duration is going to be 24 hours, and the course fee will be 12,000. So similarly, if you are interested for the DevOps training, so you can actually get it for 15,000, and the overall course duration for DevOps will be 30 hours. And if at all you want to go for a combination, right, which is what is asked today from the organizations. So no organization is expecting just only the cloud skills or just only the DevOps skills. They wanted a combo. They wanted a combination of cloud and DevOps skills. Okay. So that is the reason I'm also, providing this combo offer as well. If at all you want to take up both cloud as well as DevOps, so that is going to be spanning for 50 hours overall. And so that as part of the combo offer, I'm giving you at 21,000. Okay, so this is going to be the fee structure for the trainings that I'm offering. So, team, for people who is taking up this course, whether it is a AWS or it is a combination, it's not going to be applicable for just the DevOps alone. But if you're either taking up a AWS course or a combination of AWS plus DevOps, this is what is the bonus I'm offering. So I'm going to offer 150 examination questions for free for the SysOps certification exam. So if at all you want to go for the SysOps administrator certification, whatever questions that have appeared on the examination before, right? So I have a collation of that. So I'm going to be sharing those as which is a bonus for people who are taking up either the AWS training or a combo offer that is AWS plus DevOps. Okay. So I hope this has given you a very good insights on the training courses that I'm offering. So what is the next step? So if at all you are interested for any of these training courses from me, please you can send an email to this mentioned email ID, right? And I will be happy to share you the dates, because there are batches going on for each of these trainings. So I will see in which batch to accommodate you, and then we can start the training, right? So for whomsoever is interested to take up any of these trainings, you can send an email to me mentioning the training that you want to take up. That is, if you want to just go for AWS SysOps training, or you want to go for DevOps, or you want to go for a combo training of both AWS and DevOps, you can put that in the email, and I will be responding with the appropriate details. Okay, so also team, just wanted to share that anyway, you are watching my videos on this channel, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you for all your support and feedback extended for all my videos. So yes, you can anytime visit my YouTube channel and go through the content that I am posting it here. So you can see that already there is a playlist separately for or no, AWS, then there is a playlist available for Kubernetes related content. There is a playlist available for Ansible, SonarQube, and Terraform, right? So I will continue to post more and more videos on my channel, and I would appreciate your continued support for all my videos. So that's all I had as part of this video. Thank you all for patiently listening to this video, and I will meet you all in my next video. Thank you so much.